Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by the Condors. Jones top. Another point fence into the slot. A shot is gone! Josh Perry in double.
Left point long drive. Syracuse running. What a stop by Matisse with the left pad. Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net. Denied was Matt Schichter by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse.
Later from the red line sends it in. Hofer into his net. He stops it. Hofer looking. Hofer firing toward the empty net. He scores! Are you kidding me? Joe Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello, hello, hello from Anchorage, Alaska.
And Nashville, Tennessee.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead Podcast, episode 134 for Friday, April 6th, 2023. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring greenhouse construction tips, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Sean O'Brien from Stats Track and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And I'm Sarah Avampato from Full Press Hockey and SB Nation's Canes Country.
As always, we thank you for tuning in with us. And if you're new to hearing Sarah and I talk about hockey, we're going to talk about some news and shenanigans that went on in the AHL in our little absence here and dive in and discuss the goings-on of 8 teams around the AHL. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to break that down for you. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're checking us out from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries or Royal Road, which we're going to talk about a lot today, go check that out, so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes caring about baseball. Hockey playoffs are almost here, and you want to watch baseball? You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? And Sarah, right off the bat, shenanigans ensued while we, took a week off, and we actually had someone from our podcasting team here talk to Wendell Young about the reports that Chicago is going independent. So let's bring in former co-host of the show and current AHL editor for Full Press Hockey, CC Hawkley. Welcome back, buddy. It's been a while.
You guys kept the house clean while I was gone, so
we
that's
did.
good to see. And
it looks like you kept the house clean behind you there, so that's also positive.
Yes, I'm down in the bunker here, and but I will say producer of the Calder Farmstead, because I still do the editing. I still do, all the back end stuff. So you can, put producer on top of that, and we'll go from there.
Very fair. Very fair. All right, let's get to brass tacks, because this is what everyone wants to talk about. It is the hot story that Elliot Friedman just basically dropped on everyone's lap, and then we all scrambled like idiots to pick up what was going on. So thank you, Elliot and Jeff Merrick, for that. Basically, what was reported is that the Chicago Wolves were reaching out to player agents and saying that their plan was to go independent next year from an NHL affiliation, and to make their players aware that things were going to be different, and to kind of prime them on that. And then everyone lost their collective minds. Everyone lost the absolute run of themselves. Thankfully, we happen to know Wendell Young. He's been on this show twice now. We are, I believe, still in the process of trying to see if we can get him to come on and talk about this some more. But for right now, CC, you did have a conversation with the man. Tell me what he said.
Well, first and foremost, I do want to thank Wendell for taking the time, because he confessed to me. He said today, which was Wednesday, he said today has been crazy. He said today has been nuts, just phones blown up, emails blown up. And I reached out to the media director for Chicago and asked if I could talk to Wendell. He goes, yeah, go ahead and give him a call. And Wendell called me at, 6:30 Central Time. And he goes, when do you want to talk? And I'm like, well, I'll be home in an hour. So he goes, okay, sounds good. Well, I called him an hour later, and he's at the Milwaukee-Chicago game. He's in Milwaukee, and he's in the press box. He steps into the hallway, and he's taking my call while you hear the welcome, you know, in the background. I'm just like, all right, well, we're doing this. So thanks to Wendell for that. Long story short, you know, he took the time, 5 minutes to chat about all this. And first and foremost, he let me know that the Wolves tried to reach out to different NHL teams who affiliations were coming up and, you know, agreements were expiring, and no one was willing to take on Chicago aside from their existing affiliations. He didn't name any names, but, you know, he said, we gave it our best shot, and now we're going independent because philosophies. He said Carolina's philosophy had differed, and it changed. It changed over the 3-year agreement. That Carolina's philosophy changed to just developing prospects for the sake of sacrificing a winning team in Rosemont. And so Wendell told me that, he says, from the beginning, whenever we've signed affiliation agreements, it's been a two-part thing, that yes, we're developing players, but we are also competing for a Calder Cup. Like, that is part of the equation. The Chicago Wolves is it's a very storied franchise, you know, multiple championships, 3 Calder Cups. Like, they are in it to win it. And so that was kind of the primary thing, was that philosophies had changed. And so they were moving on. In regards to an ECHL affiliation, you know, that's obviously high on the list for Sean, as we all know, but Wendell said he valued depth. And so he wanted to carve out an official ECHL affiliation come next year. And who knows if that's going to be Norfolk again, or if they're going to go with somebody closer by, like a Fort Wayne or Kalamazoo. I mean, yeah, it's tough to say. Or an Indy, or, you know, there's a number of different avenues they could go with that. But I doubt that the Blackhawks would want to, you know, share an affiliation, but I digress. Anyway, yeah, Sarah's shaking her head. No, that's not going to happen. I was just throwing names out there. It's been a while. So, yeah, I mean, Wendell, he was very candid about it. He says, you know, we're going to search for players. He mentioned entry-level contract guys who are coming to the end of that contract, the end of that ELC, and that are not getting renewed by their teams. He said, we're gonna aim for younger guys that way. European players, of course, you know, if you look at the top 5, top 10 scorers, you know, you're going to find some Canadians in there. You're going to find some familiar faces from AHL years past. I mean, you look at Liga, who's the top scorer in Liga? Former Colorado Eagles player, Michael Jolie. He is leading Liga in scoring. So that might be a good depth piece for Chicago to maybe go and target. But yeah, European players, guys coming off their entry-level deals, undrafted, you know, college free agents and things like that. But I mean, that season's kind of, you know, passed us by. But yeah, I mean, again, Wendell, just very candid about, you know, wanting to be a competitive team and wanting to field a competitive team and not having the shackles, I guess you could say shackles of an NHL affiliation that's, you know, kind of burdening them, because we all know Chicago is a very fiercely independent AHL franchise. They have been since they came into the league in 2001. They were in before then in the IHL days from 94 to 2001. So yeah, it's been it's been a hell of a ride. It's been a hell of a couple days since that announcement was made. And like you said, Sean, we were all scrambling, and I'm just glad Wendell gave me the time to be able to digest this and put it to paper and publish it on Full Press. And now here I am talking to you guys, and yeah, it's been crazy.
So, I mean, this is not like, this plan for them is not officially official yet. Like, this isn't, you know, 100% happening, but like, it doesn't seem like there's another avenue here unless Carolina suddenly makes a U-turn. It is right. And that seems very unlikely. Am I reading that part of it correct from your conversations with him?
Yeah. I mean, Scott Powers from The Athletic, you know, he published an article about this as well. And Commissioner Howson, he is doing his best along with the Wolves president. You know, they're all kind of working in coordination to hash this out. And I think there was a quote from a source in the AHL saying that, the AHL is working with Carolina to try and figure out what the hell they're going to do. Not verbatim, obviously, but yeah, I mean, because Carolina, how are they gonna sell this? How are they gonna hitch their wagon to an AHL team that has, prospects already from another franchise? We had that a couple years ago with, Utica, with both Vancouver and St. Louis. Those circumstances were different. You had 3 teams that didn't compete that year. So, this is much different than that. This is going to be a hard sell. And
and Carolina is not going to be able to just, all right, we're going to turn Atlanta into an AHL franchise. Like, that's not a thing that they're going to have an option of, because Scott Howson doesn't sound like he has much of an appetite for that. And it's not something like Carolina can just do. Like, they can just be like, hey guys, we started an AHL team. Hope you like them. Like, that's not to mention too, like, to have a brand new AHL franchise started up, staffed, funded, the whole, arena agreements, everything. Like, it's April. You need more runway than that. Like, when was Coachella Valley announced? Way before this
year and a half, 2 years before. Yeah, absolutely.
Abbotsford, who very haphazardly stumbled to that first year, even they were way out in front of, this is what's happening. So even if that were a technical choice for Carolina, I don't think they could pull it off. They'd still have to do something. And I think it's interesting, Wendell saying that they tried to find another NHL affiliate, but that list is very limited, because a team that owns its AHL affiliate isn't going to just abandon that, that investment, that partnership they have, to go jump ship with Chicago. Pittsburgh is not giving up Wilkes-Barre Scranton to join the Chicago Wolves or anything like that. So you're basically limited to independent teams who are affiliated with independent organizations. And Boston's not leaving Providence. I can't imagine Detroit leaves Grand Rapids, because those are working very well from a geographical perspective. And from, we know these people, we know this, the facilities, all of that stuff. So your list for getting a different team was St. Louis, end of list. I'm sure there are probably one or two I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but Washington leaving Hershey.
No,
that doesn't seem likely. I think their contract just got renewed too. So they are in, if this agreement between, Carolina and Chicago was just coming to a head, there really weren't a lot of other moves here for Chicago to make if they couldn't find another affiliate. And I mean, the fact that they're going through this, it sounds like, it's not a choice they necessarily want to make. They're not jumping up and down to be independent here, which I think a lot of people that I've seen comments, across Facebook and Reddit and stuff from fans were more teams should do that. This is not going to be easy. And Wendell is 100% betting on himself here, and he should. I'm a big believer of that. But this is going to come down to pretty much him making it work, and he seems to have a very good grasp on that. Already talking about pipelines in Europe and stuff like that, and getting a pulse on guys as early as possible. He's sending out messages to agents in April, and free agency doesn't open till June. He knows that this is going to be a massive undertaking, and his sales point, I think, that I've heard from talking to you and from seeing other interviews with him, is a pretty good one. I think there isn't going to be some first round pick 20-year-old coming for your playing time because he was a first round pick. It's going to be best player plays, regardless of that. And I think that's going to appeal to a lot of guys. I don't think that he's going to be able to land the TJ Tynans or the the Michael Carconis of the AHL, that top tier of veteran guy, because I think those guys are still chasing an NHL dream. But that kind of tier below them of veterans, your Sam Annis's, your Cole Schneiders, your Curtis McKenzie's, not necessarily them, but guys of that nature who are, solid AHL players, but have kind of seemed to understand this is it for them. This is very likely where they're going to finish their playing career. And they seem to have made peace with that, and I think that's fine. But I don't think you're going to get those guys who are still pushing. I think the biggest target for him in the offseason is Alex Barry-Boulet. Like, he's someone who has been in the Tampa system for years. He got a shot in Seattle, and even Seattle, who was desperate for basically anything with offensive punch last season, still sent him back. So, like, I think he deserves a legitimate shot. He can definitely play, but it seems like the NHL is like, oh, you're how tall? No, I don't know about that. And doesn't want to let him, doesn't want to give him the opportunity to show what he can do in a real sense instead of playing, fourth line minutes. So, like, I think there's a chance Wendell could sell someone like that on what Chicago is offering and be successful. And that would be a huge get for them. I think the biggest problem is going to be not finding those like talented veterans, but finding your, 23 and 24-year-olds to fill out your middle six lines or your second defensive pair who are also useful. Like, you can find, college free agents or, undrafted CHL guys or, younger guys coming from Europe looking for an AHL opportunity. But are they going to be able to play, second, third line minutes, second power play, kill penalties, and like score 10 goals and 25 points? Like, are they going to be depth scoring guys? Because like, that's the hard part. Like, Ethan Franks, those guys don't grow on trees. They're incredibly rare to have undrafted, like college free agent type success that he's having. And yeah, you don't have to have someone perform at Ethan Frank's level for that to be a home run. But like, I mean, you look at the guys who like Bobby Trevino came from that path in Hartford, and like, he's been okay, but he's like one of the success stories. And that's not exactly what you're looking for when you need to fill, probably 7 or 8 roster spots with guys of that nature.
Right.
Sarah, I've been talking a lot here. I'll give you a chance to chime in here. This is your home market. What say you about all of this?
Well, I mean, first I have to admit that like I was wrong and you were right, because this is definitely one that you called previously. And I was like, no, like the whole time Chicago and Carolina have talked about how great the relationship is and how great it was that, they all know each other and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, of course, they haven't re-signed it yet, but like, nope. I was very wrong. So congratulations, Sean. You win that one. But yeah, I mean, the thing that I keep thinking of is, what you were just talking about. Like, yeah, you're going to be able to find those like 27, 28, 29-year-old guys who have kind of realized the NHL isn't, in it for them. But I don't know how you find that like 22, 23, 24-year-old who has the like self-awareness to say, no, I'm not going to chase the NHL anymore. Like all of them, I feel like you could even ask like an ECHLer and they're going to be like, no, I can still do it. So I feel like, finding those guys who are willing to take that AHL deal, with the uncertainty of like, yeah, maybe an NHL team will notice you, but maybe not. Like, I think that's going to be tough. And, I think that, there's a lot of stuff flying around in, Twitter hot takes and everything about the Wolves. And, it is true that, they've been affiliated with Vancouver. They've been affiliated with St. Louis. They've been affiliated with Vegas, Carolina, and all of these things last 3 to 4 years or so until Wendell Young gets tired of the fact that like he can't do what he wants. And then there's some bad blood, and then they end the affiliation, and then they try it again with a new team, and the cycle just keeps repeating. And it's kind of a shame that, they aren't able to find a team. I look at Hershey. Hershey has managed to maintain that same like fiercely independent vibe that the Wolves have, and yet have had basically like an eternal relationship with the Capitals and very rarely miss the playoffs. It just makes me wonder, like, what is different? How has Hershey been able to accomplish that of balancing the need of the Capitals to develop their players, but also with the Bears wanting to win as an organization? And why haven't the Wolves been able to replicate that? I don't have the answer to it, but clearly it can be done. No, Hershey's not out there winning the Calder Cup every other year, but they at least get a couple rounds of playoffs usually. And that's clearly what the Wolves want. they just haven't been able to make that work with an NHL team. And I'd love to know. I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
I at least have a thought about that, about why Hershey has made it work and why Chicago's kind of struggled with it, is mostly because of where the Capitals are in their like competitive cycle. So the Capitals are going to miss the playoffs this year for the first time since since Ovi was like of legal drinking or something like that. And like the whole time that Capitals Bears relationship has happened, the Capitals have been competitive. They've been in win now mode. They've been, we don't care if we don't have a first round pick until, the next solar eclipse. Like, it's fine. We're trying to win now. So like they never had a lot of like grade A blue chip prospects to put in Hershey. Like they didn't have multitudes of those guys where it's like, why isn't my, third first round pick that I sent you not getting, power play one time? Like Hershey's developed some guys like Martin Farivari. They've, they're still working with guys like Connor McMichael, and like they're able to give those guys the playing time that they need because there's only like one or two of the like important prospects, and the rest of the time they can fill that with guys who are, yes, technically on Washington contracts, but like Garrett Pilon is not a prospect anymore. Sam Ann is obviously not a prospect anymore, and like they can kind of balance that, like put your important prospects in the right places with veteran filling, the roster. Like, I think that's the difference, is that because the Capitals just haven't had a sexy pipeline for prospects, because they trade them away. Like they trade away those draft picks at the deadline or in the off season or something for assets that help them win now. And like, while Carolina's window is open, their goal is not pushing all the chips in. It's let's, keep this window going as long as they can. So they have a better pipeline. St. Louis, when they were the affiliate, if I remember correctly, this is years ago now, wasn't in win now mode. They were in build pipeline mode. They had important prospects in Chicago that they wanted to get more playing time. They kind of handcuffed them. Vancouver hasn't been in win now mode since 2011. So like, I think that's the problem, is they haven't been able to find a team like Washington or Pittsburgh or Tampa. Like that's the other thing too. Syracuse paired with Tampa, who's been in win now mode for the last 5-6 years. So the fact that it's like, we're going to send you Alex Barré-Boulet, Nick Perbix. Yeah. And like,
you guys would be okay with Jack Fontaine?
Yeah, like,
oh gosh, I forgot.
Finding playing time for guys like that is easy when there's only 2 or 3 of them. Like, but Carolina, and when it was Carolina and just Jack Drury and I don't know, Joey Keane or something like that, that was easy. But then when you start adding more and more and more, it's like, man, Dominic Bach sure doesn't fit into this too much anymore. Like that's where I think they run into those problems where they're running into pipelines that are too big or too deep. And then you have the rift that wouldn't exist if those players just didn't exist. Sorry, Cece, you were going to add a little more there.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, Wendell, he kind of elaborated on the 260 game veteran rule, the pro games limit, and to have 6 players maximum over that limit. And he said, we haven't really pushed our roster to that limit very often, if at all. And I mean, Sarah, I'll defer to you for a second. Have you really seen a lot of 260 plus game veterans signed to the Wolves?
I would say no, but this year I feel like they probably could have run into that problem had not everyone gotten hurt. I think that they had a fair number of guys who might have fallen into that category, but like every time you blinked, another one of them was hurt. So they haven't run into that problem because guys have just, just not been in the lineup consistently. Otherwise, I could see them being in that situation if all of those guys were healthy and like, the guys that they had brought in on like PTOs and stuff. Jason Garrison hadn't like blown his knee out again or something. They could have been in that position, but the injury bug just really like did not. I mean, I guess in that way it did them a favor because they didn't have to worry about what happens when we have too many veterans, but kind of tanked a lot of other stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Wendell. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I think the other thing too that's interesting here that we kind of haven't talked about, hasn't come up too much, but it's definitely something I think when you talk to Wendell that he brought up, is that you can also take loans from other NHL affiliated teams who send your, like, that's something that's very rarely done. And usually when it's done for obvious reasons or weird ones. Like there's usually not an in between. It's like you sent Gemel Smith to Henderson, or like what was the one, like when Bridgeport assigned Richard Panik last year to Chicago, that was because of veteran problem. That was a futures considerations trade for them. Or like when Max Gildon got sent back to Bakersfield from Charlotte because that was where he had success and blah, blah, blah. But like, if you have another AHL team that's running into those kind of, we have too many guys and not enough playing time thing, Wendell can call up that NHL team and be like, hey, we got a second line center spot that I think your guy would fit right in well with our team. Like, we're not promising him that we're going to keep him there if he sucks, but like, if he's someone who needs playing time, like we can find, we're giving him a fair shake at playing time if you want. And then that kind of changes we can't get guys called up. Like but that is a move that is something that is in their arsenal that they can kind of negotiate with a little bit.
Well, and another thing that Wendell told me, Sean, was that as soon as he sent that email to the agents and, buzz started generating on Twitter after, the Jeff Merrick show and things like that. Wendell told me, he said he was getting a bunch of text messages, a bunch of emails from former players of the Wolves that were interested in signing next year. And so makes you scratch your head and say, okay, well, who, I mean, there's a lot of former Wolves out there, a lot of former guys that are active. And, one of the names I saw floated out on Twitter was, Brandon Peary is just like, all right, here we go. So insert GIF meme here. But yeah, I mean, he's even said that there's some guys on NHL deals that are expiring this year that are like, I'm not happy where I'm at. I'm okay. Like, I understand I'm at the end of my career and I'm willing to play some AHL time. So with kind of that teaser of like, hey, we've got, the historical alumni reaching out and saying, hey, we're interested, and some NHL contracted guys saying, hey, we're interested. You thought the turnover was bad after the Calder Cup year. It's going to be a hell of a team. And to touch on what you were saying, Sean, and then I'll leave it at this, but it's like playing NHL 17 with the Vegas Golden Knights, the expansion squad, and every player on the team is like an 83, 85. Like, that's what the Chicago Wolves are going to be next season. Like, you're going to have the expansion Vegas Golden Knights, the island of misfit players, and it's going to be either, maybe it's a resounding success, or maybe it's just like a colossal, like, just a bunch of, veteran guys that are like, I don't have to mentor rookies anymore. I don't know. It's just going to be, it's going to be a sight to behold. And so,
somewhere out there is a grizzled AHL veteran that's going to sign in Chicago, and he's just thinking, man, I don't have to pose for another TikTok ever again.
Yes. Cody McLeod is like, I'm coming out of retirement.
That takes away one of my most frequently interesting topics of discussion when I interview players is, you've been around here forever and now you're on a line with like a 19-year-old. Let's talk about it. Like, here goes that. There goes at least like 3 articles out of my arsenal. Yeah.
So you're playing with other 30-years. How's that feel?
One thing that, and I thought of this question like well after you hung up the phone with Wendell, but I really am kicking myself because it's a good one, is, and I'm just going to pose this out there to listeners, anyone. So next season, they're independent. The season, like, let's say they have a reasonable amount of success. They make the playoffs. They win a playoff round or two. They don't win the Calder Cup. They don't go to Calder Cup finals, but a profitable and successful season for the Wolves in this independent run. The next season happens. They're still independent. They still make the playoffs. They lose maybe in the first round, maybe win that first play-in round, lose in the second. Still profitable, successful season. In that third year, the St. Louis Blues come knocking and say, hey, we're looking for an affiliate that's a little closer to our zip code here. Would you affiliate with us? What do you do in that point if you're Wendell Young? Like, what is the marker of success that you need to have as an independent team before you are turning away an affiliation from an NHL club? Like,
I'm curious with what Sarah's take is on this, but go ahead and finish your thoughts. Sorry.
because like if you win back-to-back Calder Cups and the St. Louis Blues come knocking, you tell them to kick rocks. Obviously, if you win 12 games combined across 2 seasons, you're like, yes, Daddy, please yoke me. But like,
Daddy Blues. Oh my God.
You're having very different reactions. But like, if you have a qualified amount of success, what is the tipping point for you in which an NHL affiliate would be interesting again? Because I have to imagine at some point it will be, just because like if this isn't a runaway success, and I think they have a chance at being successful. I don't think it's going to be him building last year's Wolves team all over again. Like I have a lot of respect for Wendell Young and the job he does, but this is unprecedented in a modern AHL, and he's going to have to work his ass off and to accomplish basically a thing he's done previously with an NHL affiliation for what I imagine is a smaller workload on him. Like, I have to imagine that's a factor too. If an NHL team comes and you had some success, be like, yeah, we could probably have the same level of success and it'll be a lot easier on me. I might get to like have dinner with my wife once a week or something like that. So I think that's an interesting point. Is this forever? Like, at what point does an NHL come knocking and you say yes again? Sarah, your thoughts?
Well, I think I mean, that's a good question, because is this something you really want to do in perpetuity? Do you really want to be chasing like 23-year-old random dudes from Europe for the rest of your tenure as GM? Like, I don't really think you do. I think he wants to prove a point. I think St. Louis is a bad example because I'm pretty sure there's bad blood there from the first time they were affiliated. But some theoretical other team, like Milwaukee Admirals disappear and Nashville needs a new place to go or something. Yeah. I could see it. I could see that conversation happening of, hey, listen, our affiliate is up. We're looking to move somewhere else. You've had some success, but I wonder too if Wendell kind of feels like I've been burned every time I've done this, because every time they enter into a new affiliate with another team, he kind of gets, he has the same, I feel like you can go back to read any of the like press release conferences that he's done when they announced St. Louis, when they announced Vegas, when they announced Carolina, about talking about how, the Wolves have a culture of winning and we're going to be allowed to run this team and, do what we want with it, blah, blah, blah. And then a couple years later, we end up back in the same place. So like, is he just tired of that grind of being told by an NHL affiliate that he can kind of do what he wants with the team? And then 2 years later, hey, here's all these 19-year-olds from Europe. Go play them. They don't know what they're doing. Have fun. Like
Wendell is pining for the days of the Atlanta Thrashers. 10-year affiliation.
Yeah.
10-year affiliation.
That's the only one that worked.
Like, holy crap. And then, of course, when they get bought and moved to Winnipeg, then they've got to do the 3 or 4 year, dance that Sarah was talking about. But you know what? The Wolves are letting their freak flag fly. They're like, everybody else has a dance partner. We're going to get on the dance floor and we're going to show you our moves. And they're going to be like Kevin James and Hitch, and they're just going to, do the thing. And Will Smith is like, just keep it in here. Just keep it in here. But the Wolves are going to do a little spin move, and they're going to bust a move, and they're going to be dancing on their own on the dance floor next season. But I tell you, it's crazy. I mean, who would? I mean, in those 2 or 3 years, there would have to be a collapse of an affiliation, of these independent, however many teams, 9, 10, 11, I forget the number off the top of my head, 11. Independent AHL team, 11. So there would have to be a collapse because, like you said, people have dance partners. People find it hard to believe the Colorado Eagles are independent because they're so entrenched with the Avalanche, and it's kind of the same for Hershey and Washington. You're like, they're independent, really? And so Hershey, it's the thing.
Hershey is never going, like, Hershey is Herco that owns them, and until Hershey becomes unprofitable or someone makes like an incredibly ridiculous offer for the Bears, the Bears are going to be independent for the rest of their time. But like, I keep coming back to St. Louis because A, geography, and B, like, yeah, Springfield's working for them. It's fine. But eventually it seems like they're going to come back. And if that's the only other team left that's in, within a direct flight, well, then that's the place you go. Like, I don't think Tampa's leaving Syracuse. Maybe Nashville and Milwaukee. I can't speak to their relations. It seems to be working, but at least they're closer. So, but yeah, I don't know. I struggle to see what happens next. But yeah, that is what the interesting point is. Like, when does this end, and what's the tipping point? But for right now, this is the direction we're all going, and we're going to find out, and it's going to be wild.
Hold on to your butts.
All right, Cece, do you want to stay and talk about Scott Howson, or do you want to dip out here?
Let's talk about Commissioner Howson a little bit. I'm feeling wily now. You got me worked up.
Because Elliot Friedman out here just running amok in our lives. As we're away from the week, as I was on the IR, which am healing up nicely. Thank you, everyone who inquired. None of you.
I did. I am not no one.
But it got dropped that from Elliot Friedman that there was some behind the scenes politicking that some independent teams, he cited 4 to 5 that he did not name, were not necessarily thrilled with Scott Howson and looking to try and push him out as his contract is up at the end of this season. And the NHL caught wind of this, and I forget who at the NHL off the top of my head. Cece, do you have the name?
At the NHL?
Who was like, oh yeah, it was like the deputy commissioner or something like
Bill
that.
Daly or someone.
Yeah, it was Bill Daly, I think, trying to like make sure that, he ironed things out here, because the NHL was like, no, Scott Howson is doing a fine job. And like, that was, it seemed like a very, sorry, this wasn't Elliot Friedman that reported. This was Darren Dredger. Elliot Friedman expanded upon it. I apologize. It's late. But that was kind of the long and the short of it. Cece, what did you think about this? I'll start with you first. When you saw that like there were teams unhappy and trying to like go behind the scenes cloak and dagger style to kick Scott Howson to the curb.
Well, I did ask Wendell Young a little bit about it. And I do have a quote from him. I asked him, I said, there's been rumors in the previous weeks leading up to this. And, are there other teams' displeasure? Was this kind of a contributing factor to you guys going independent, and not having to deal with an NHL team? And he stated it was totally unrelated. And that was a whole other subject that's going on internally in the American Hockey League. And he said he thinks that's where it should stay was internally. So Yes. So in that regard, I mean, again, the Wolves have a vicious independent streak. Like they are, like we've seen, we've experienced it. We've seen it. We've read the tea leaves. Like it's there. The Wolves are an independent franchise in more ways than one. So are they involved in wanting to get Howson canned? I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of factors, a lot of positive factors that, people may not point to. They point to the COVID season, say, the Pacific Division playoff was ridiculous. And, the Calder Cup wasn't, it was. And then the Calder Cup wasn't awarded. So that was a failure. And they point to those things as reasons why he should go. But I wouldn't take it to that extreme. I'd be like, yeah, I know. Sean's making a sour, bitter beer face over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, those aren't reasons why he should go. But it's very interesting that 4 or 5, like, and to have it leaked and public, and it's just like, what's the tea on that? I haven't really heard anything edgewise as to where it's coming from, but
I have some theories here.
Of course you do.
Yeah, I am a theorist at my very bones. I will let Sarah chime in here first, though, because I know I will go on at length. And I want to,
well, that's good.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, basically, this is one of those things where it's like, no one who anyone asked had any clue where this was coming from. Like, anyone who I asked, any sources that I had, particularly out west, all of them were like, we've never heard this before. Like, it just seems to have been dropped out of the middle of nowhere. Very clearly someone with an axe to grind. Like, something like this doesn't go public unless someone is trying to accomplish something with it, Like, this is very much someone who is bitter about something, who went to Darren Dredger and was like, hey, so you didn't hear it from me, but I'm like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, I can't even, like, Scott Howson has basically had no time to do anything. Like, he like got a season off the ground whenever like half the teams were, it was just weird. Like, he's had like the COVID season, and now like this, if you give anyone like a do-over on, not punting them out of their role immediately, it's the guy who just tried to navigate through like a bunch of weird seasons and hasn't, like, nothing has been implemented, nothing has been taken away. It just sort of exists. I feel like the plans that have been in motion to like get everyone playing the same number of games, like that's been in motion for a while. Like, that's not a Scott Howson came in and like put the hammer down.
And like, I see the exchange there of like, all right, teams that used to play 76 now lose a couple of home games, but the expanded playoff gives them more revenue because the expanded playoff is a cash grab. I've said from the very beginning. But like, people who are mad about the Pacific playoff, and have reasons to be, the players should be mad. Like, agents should be furious. There should be sword pictures through Scott Howson from Alan Walsh. But like, I think there's confusion where it's like Scott Howson's job is to serve the owners of the AHL teams. Like, those are his bosses. That's why the owners of independent teams are trying to, get him canned or not renewed. Sorry. But like, the NHL's Pacific Division team owners, almost all of which are NHL clubs, decided they wanted this. So Scott Howson made it happen because that's his job. His job is to try and implement the things that they want that are good for the league. And if people are mad about that, don't be mad at Scott Howson. He did the job that he signed up to do. Be mad at the owners of those teams who forced something through that the players didn't want. Like, that's where you're directing your anger. As far as the like where this came from, I have a theory that like there are some independent teams, and I'm not gonna point the finger at Wendell Young here, although his answer is at least a little suspicious. Like, I'm not saying that he was on board with being one of them. That would actually be surprising to me. But like, I think he knows a little more than he wants to let on, and that's fine. That's his right. But at the same point, like, I think an independent team that's been kind of in the cellar for a couple of years, whose attendance is dwindling, who maybe made some road trips out west this year. Maybe they rhyme with Fran Bapids. That's a team that has been annoyed by some of the things that have happened, and especially too, like a third year in the cellar, and they went to San Diego and Ontario and spent all that money. And they're like, why did you let us do that, Scott Howson? Like, that was his fault.
It's the Eric Andre meme where he's shooting Hannibal Buress and he goes, why would the AHL do this? And Eric Andre is Fran Vapids. What the hell, Fran?
This is me speculating. I do not know that this is what's happening, but something like that, or like Cleveland planning the outdoor game that they put a lot of time and effort to, that Scott Howson made very clear was strictly their MO. And then it gets sunned out and they get like a quarter of the attendance that they were expecting. Like, I mean, yeah, it was the visuals were nice when you ignored the fact that the like seats were 85% completely empty. That was not a good look for that. So like, I could see them being not thrilled, with how things are going for them, and think that Scott Howson is to blame. Also, interesting nugget that Elliot Friedman once again just kind of dropped and let us all scurry for, is that he talked to a source inside the AHL that went unnamed that said they had some problems with the people who were kicking rocks at Scott Howson, because they were people who interviewed for Scott Howson's job when Dave Andrews was leaving and didn't get it, and now suddenly are mad about the job that he's doing that they didn't get. And that feels very, I won't say unethical, but like dubious. It's like, well, I'd have done a better job, so screw this guy. Like, that very much seems to feel like I think this got to Darren Dredger because either someone finally had their, diaper filled to the maximum extent and was like, I have Darren Dredger's number. Like, let's get this out there. Or that an NHL club found out about other AHL teams doing this, and they told Darren Dredger to make sure that this didn't swell to something bigger and dumber. And they were the ones that sounded the alarm. But either way, like, Darren Dredger, I don't think did any digging here to find this. Mm-hmm. Someone came to him and handed it to him. And spoiler, certain teams, GMs and front offices have like handshake agreements with certain insiders about like, when I have a story that I want to get out to the public, I come to you, whether it's Bob McKenzie or Elliot Friedman or Darren Dredger or any of those guys. Like, they have those kind of handshake agreements. So if we could figure out which ones had the Darren Dredger agreement, I think we could probably, start to circle in on which team did this. But I haven't done that much triangulating in like Charlie Day whiteboard things.
The math lady meme.
Yeah. But like, this very much feels like someone got angry at Scott Howson, had like, or two or three teams got angry at Scott Howson and made, tried to make some shadow moves that were never going to go places. Like, teams are having record revenue seasons across the league. A lot of them are healthy, including independent teams. Like, I don't think this was ever going to be more than a one-day thing. But like, the idea that not everyone loves Scott Howson shouldn't be that shocking. Like, I think we forget that, his predecessor ruled this league with an iron damn fist. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. It worked, and it worked really well. And people seem to be kind of upset that Scott Howson also chooses to rule with an iron fist. And like, they were hoping for someone they could finally, bend a little bit more, and he's not having it. And I think that's fine. I myself personally, if I had to give Scott Howson a grade so far, I would say B+. Like, what he did, getting the league through the pandemic is huge and it's an insurmountable task. But I'm also not a fan of like when he does the Gary Bettman thing where it's like he says the obviously false part out loud that like it's his job to do, like Gary Bettman saying that, concussions don't relate to CTE or everyone loves the new digital board ads or like no one tanks. Like Scott Howson being like, oh yeah, Stockton's going to stay in that market next year. When I'm like, or, oh, we don't release the time on ace data because it's not accurate. I'm like, dude, have you seen your shot location data? Don't like, and yeah, that's his job, is to toe the company line in public. But like, I don't like that aspect of his job or anyone. So I dock him credit for that. Otherwise, I think he's done a very good job.
Sarah, what would you grade him?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm in that same sort of like B-ish category. Like, he hasn't done anything that I'm like, well, that was horrible. But he has, he's not in this role to innovate. He's not in this role to like, come up with crazy brand new ideas to jumpstart, Fran Grapids or whatever. Like, I think he's fine. And that's kind of what you want out of your commissioner, is a guy who's just fine. Like, it'd be great if he wasn't Gary Bettman too, but like, oh well, that's how it goes.
I'm kind of in the same page as you guys. I mean, B+. I wasn't a fan of the Pacific Division playoff during the COVID season, not for just because it was completely useless and there was no point to it, but there was also a players' vote that the majority of them did not want to participate in this playoff. No. Yeah. And so that kind of was like, that's a bad look. Yeah. You don't consider what your players are thinking. So that's why I'm kind of in between a B and a B+. So like if it was going to be a percentage, I'd say maybe an 86 or an 87 as opposed to a solid, 88 or 89 in the B+ range. But yeah, I mean, when you have to navigate a whole league and play in empty arenas and not have a bubble system and, things like that. I mean, it's completely insane. Like, especially at the AHL level. Like, if you're a major top 5 sports league in North America, that's different. Like, you have resources, you have, ways to make it work. But when you're working with the minor leagues and, the ECHL, God, like half the league didn't even play that season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the AHL, with only just 3 teams bowing out, like to navigate 28 teams, and yeah, the 3-team Atlantic Division was something else. God. Yeah, Bridgeport, Providence, and Hershey, right? Playing each other a million times, or not Hershey.
Providence, Bridgeport, and Hartford.
And Hartford, yes.
Groundhog Day division.
But Groundhog Day division, yes. Boy, we've been doing it for that long. Can you believe it, Sean? But yeah, I digress. B plus. I'm with you guys. When words get tossed around like his future is in limbo, there's an insurrection going on in the AHL. Quit sensationalizing it. It's 4 or 5 teams that are a little bit butthurt for whatever reason. Like Sean said, people that were candidates to be, president of the AHL. It's like, okay, there's going to be people that are unhappy. 4 or 5 teams does not an insurrection make. Yeah. Like out of 32, come on. Like,
no, this is, if this ends up becoming, in the off season and we have a new president in the AHL in October, we'll absolutely pivot back here and be like, we were stupid for discounting this. But like right now, it's really hard to see this becoming more than something we forget about in 2 months when the Calder Cup is being handed out.
And the fact that it was like just that one day, like it was like Darren Dredger had that report. Everyone was like, "Oh, wonder what this means," and then it went away. There were no further leaks. There were no further discussions. Like, I think which really just further points to like someone is ticked off about something, just wants it to get out there in the open that they're ticked off about something. And then like, that's it. Like the whole, like, is this driven by people who didn't get the job they wanted? Like, that's an interesting aspect to me. Like, for people who don't know me outside of this podcast, my day job is in HR. And one of the, like, anytime someone comes to me complaining about a colleague's work, one of the first things I do is look to see if that person complaining was maybe in the running for that person's job. And like, there is a significant amount of time where that is the case, where like, there may be a shred of truth to the fact that they're like, this person is not performing, but I'm like, you're bringing this up because you are mad that you didn't get this job. And so now you just want to tank this other person. So like that rings true to me, not knowing any of the players, not knowing that like any broader context to it. Like I see this play out in the real world all the time of like, I am bitter and mad and I think that I should have your job because I think I would be better at it. So I'm going to tell the people that you suck and just see where that goes. And usually it goes nowhere.
Spoiler alert, millionaires and billionaires are just as petty as ordinary people.
Yeah, they sure are.
if not more so, because they have more resources to be petty.
Yeah.
I mean, how long are we going to have Doge on Twitter? I
did the thing where you hide it so you don't. I like blocked the element so I don't have to see the stupid dog. And I love dogs, but I don't want to see that dog.
No. Not letting that tangent. Not going there.
No,
we are already 52 minutes and we haven't even talked about any of our team dives yet. So like, yeah.
You're welcome. Glad to bring the length. Glad to bring the time length.
Are we not doing phrasing anymore, guys?
Phrasing.
Don't look at me.
That's why I said time length. Time length.
All right. Cece, that is the point in which we are going to move on with the show here. Thank you so much for talking to Wendell, giving us some insight straight from the source, and learning that, when Scott Howson, if we ever get Scott Howson on the podcast, I will personally inform him you gave him an 86.
I said 86 or 87. You hold your horses there, sir. You hold your damn horses there. That Silver Knight horsey on your jersey there. Hold that horsey. Love you guys.
Cece,
good to
thank
see
you so much for this, and I apologize if you have to do any additional editing from me. Just letting go of some words here late at night.
You're fine. I'll be happy to edit. And thanks for having me on, guys. Keep up the good work. And I'll see you soon in the editing room.
All right. Sounds good. Bye, Cece. All right, Sarah, we have teams to talk about still.
Do we?
We do, unfortunately. So let's get into our team focused dives here. We will do as we always do, go east to west, Atlantic to Pacific. Sarah, start us off in the Atlantic. Where are we going?
We are going to Lehigh Valley. We're taking a look at the Lehigh Valley Phantoms first, where we're focusing in on Artem Anisimov. This season has been a pretty interesting one for him. He was in Flyers camp over the summer, but he took a shot off of his foot, which broke it, and therefore ended his chances at making the Flyers on opening night. He did find his way to Lehigh Valley first for a conditioning stint after the foot healed, but he ended up staying. He took an AHL contract there. And initially, we questioned how much he had left in the tank at 34 years old. But he started off the season red hot. He had 12 goals, 6 assists for 18 points over the first 17 games that he played. However, since then, it hasn't gone quite as well. In his last 34 games, Anisimov has 7 goals and 10 assists for 17 points. So, Sean, what is going on with Artem Anisimov?
Let's talk about that hot run to start the season. His first 17 games, he scored 12 goals on 35 shots on goal. That's a shooting percentage of 34.3. That is wildly unsustainable. Since then, he's shooting 10.1%, which is definitely sustainable and maybe even a bit on the low side, maybe a little unlucky. But if you go back and look at a lot of the points he scored on that heater, like a lot of tap-in goals at the back post. Of the 12 that he scored, I probably could have scored 7 or 8 of them if you just put me in his skates at that moment and let the pass come to me. Like, they were straight up just pass right across the slot or cutting through Royal Road, and he just touches it home. Like, it doesn't take a lot of talent to put the puck in at that point. And that's not to say that Anisimov isn't talented or those goals require no skill. That's not true. Anisimov plays a net front game. He's a garbage man, and backdoor tap-ins, deflections, that kind of thing. Those are part of the job. But Anisimov was putting pucks into wide open nets from the back post. And while he did maneuver to get there, create some space, find passing lanes for himself, which takes awareness, and that was a type of player that the Phantoms really lacked, a net front guy who has that awareness for soft ice and who could find ways to position himself for those kinds of plays. Like, teams aren't just going to give you tap-in opportunities at the back door all day, every day. And once it seems like teams realized the Phantoms were looking to do that with Anisimov, and that's where he was doing damage from, they started to tighten up a little bit on defense there. And teams have started to do a better job of just taking those opportunities away from him where he can basically have a freebie. But having to worry about Anisimov at the net front has also opened up more things for his line mates that may not otherwise be open. Anisimov's most regular line mates this season have been Ollie Lexell and Tyson Forrester. And while he was with them more often in the beginning, he still usually has at least one of them on his line, if not both. But their scoring hasn't been terribly different, which means they're seeing lanes open up that Anisimov is basically pulling a defender away to make sure they cover that passing lane. And they're taking advantage of what that opens up for the two of them. One door closes, it opens up another one. Basically, just because Anisimov isn't scoring doesn't mean he's not having an impact on the ice. He's going to the front of the net. He's taking defenders away. He's taking goalies' eyes away. And that's why you still see his line mates having success, even if necessarily he isn't finding his way on the score sheet. And I think that's important. It's also been said multiple times, including a full-length feature in The Athletic by, I want to say, Charlie O'Connor, about Anisimov being a mentor off the ice to a lot of the younger players and, helping ground some of those guys. And, when you're a veteran of, I think it's 771 NHL games, you have a Stanley Cup ring, your voice carries a lot of weight. And even, the players have said that, he could say the exact same thing that the coaches are, but coming from him, it hits differently. Like, when you're a coach, and you're a little older, it doesn't feel like you quite connect as well to the youth, even though you were there and did those things. It's different when it's a guy who's literally still there, but is well respected. So he's definitely bringing those elements off the ice as well, which are important. And we've seen, Ollie Lexell and Tyson Ford, a lot of the other guys take on.
Yeah, sounds like a guy who, I don't know, maybe could be interesting to the Chicago Wolves, looking for that sort of veteran player. But, that's a problem for the future. Looking at the Phantoms as a whole, the model has them at a 97.6 chance, 97.6% chance to make the playoffs. That feels high, however, given the fact that they're only about 4 points ahead of Bridgeport in the standings. So what do you make of their playoff percentage? And can the Phantoms go on a run?
Well, nothing is ever a lock until it is. But the Phantoms have a 4-point lead with 5 games left over Bridgeport, who they just beat. Bridgeport hasn't won 5 straight games all season and let Hartford in the back door. Phrasing. It's a real struggle to imagine Bridgeport making a run at this point, but it's technically not impossible, especially after, we saw the free fall that Hartford did last season. So yes, Lehigh Valley isn't safe, but they need some extraordinary circumstances to not make it at this point. But it's not enough for Bridgeport to go on a run. Hartford would also need to overtake the Phantoms in the standings. And yeah, they're only 1 point back. So it's not hard to imagine the Phantoms fall to the 6th seed here. It's still another layer of how the Phantoms can't make it. They need both of those teams to leap them. As far as playoff runs for the Phantom goes, I think I'm a lot higher on the Phantoms than general consensus around, the people who cover this league and so on and so forth. Although I didn't poll all of them. Reading of some loose tea leaves on Twitter, I think the Phantoms could be a sneaky team in the Atlantic to do damage this season. I think it's going to come down to goaltending, though. I haven't seen anything on the health of Troy Grosnick, but he would definitely improve the outlook. As Ershon hasn't really been the steadiest goalie this season for the Phantoms. He's young, he's had good moments and bad. If he can get hot, or if Grosnick can come in and Troy Grosnick we're used to seeing, the can go places. They don't have a lot of quote unquote star power at the AHL level, but they have great depth on offense. They can play a physical, gritty kind of playoff style hockey that we think about in the Calder Cup playoffs, where everything gets tighter and more physical. If they can get some saves from Samuel Ershon or from Troy Grosnick, it's pretty much one of those two. They can definitely make a run, but they're going to go as far as the weakest link in this team takes them. And right now I think that's goaltending. But the idea that could they win the Atlantic Division in the playoffs and, go to the Eastern Conference Finals? I think so. Are they definitely going to? No, they're not my pick for it, but it wouldn't shock me if, come April, we're talking about them in the Eastern Conference Finals. All right. I think that is a good place to leave it for Lehigh Valley. Let's move on. Sarah, let's talk about the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. All season, we've been asking the question, are they for real? Is this the year that we can trust Bridgeport? They had a hot start to the season, but they've been on a steady decline since December. At their best, Bridgeport was predicted to end the season with 93 points, but now their projected finish is 76 points, just missing the playoffs. Is it finally time to call it? Can we officially declare the Bridgeport Sound Tigers are still the Bridgeport Sound Tigers for another year?
All right, so Bridgeport does technically have a 27.5% chance to make the playoffs, but yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that Bridgeport is not for real this year. That October-November performance was basically just a mirage. It was fun while it lasted, but Bridgeport is back to, I think, where everyone sort of thought they'd be. So the Bridgeport Sound Tigers, I'm pretty sure, are going to live on for another year on this podcast. Now, this is hockey. Anything can happen. Bridgeport has 5 games remaining, and they're just 3 points behind Hartford. Hartford currently has that final playoff spot in the division. But like you were just talking about before, it would take a lot of things happening, both very catastrophically for some teams and very good for other teams, for Bridgeport to sort of change their outcome. Their schedule isn't doing them any favors either. They end their season with games against Hershey and Providence. They're 6-5-0 against Providence this year. So, okay, there's a chance there for that. They are 1-2-2 against Hershey. So that's not great. The other remaining games come against Lehigh Valley, where Bridgeport is 2-4-0-1. Wilkes-Barre Scranton, where they're 3-2. And of course, a game against Hartford, where they're 5-6 this season. So I'm not saying it's not okay to dream, but maybe don't. They are playing teams that they traditionally haven't had a ton of success against over this year. I'll give them maybe a win over Wilkes-Barre Scranton, who has just 2 wins in their last 10 games. Pittsburgh keeps having to call up guys on emergency bases, so Scranton isn't looking so hot right now. But Providence and Providence and Hartford have each won 8 of their last 10. Hershey's won 7 of their last 10. Let's give them a win against Lehigh Valley for fun. Lehigh Valley's won 6 of their last 10. But unless Hartford collapses in the remaining 4 games, which is possible, we saw them collapse last year, Bridgeport surging ahead of them feels pretty unlikely. And if we look at that rolling PDO chart that we bring up all the time on here for the hilarity of seeing what it does, Bridgeport is kind of on a bender right now. It's not quite as dramatic as we've seen from other teams this year, but Bridgeport has been up over 100 in PDO since February. They're currently sitting on 103.94. There's not much time left in the season. Sure, it's theoretically possible that they ride that wave out. While Hartford, sitting at 108.69, could crash. That's pretty high. It feels unlikely that everything is going to break Bridgeport's way. A lot of things would have to happen for them to jump up into the playoffs. What has gone wrong for Bridgeport this year? It's not their scoring. Their 220 goals are first in their division. Chris Terry is tied for 5th in overall scoring in the league with 67 points. Andy Andrioff is 14th with 59 points. Both of those guys rank as first-line forwards per the model. Even strength shooting is at 8.5%, not the best, but certainly in the top 10 or so for the league. The power play is a huge strength for Bridgeport. The net power play is second in the league at 21.4%. They are getting caved in at shots against and by extension goals allowed. Bridgeport allows an average of 32.26 regulation shots against per game. The only teams who are worse are Springfield at 32.61 and San Diego at 32.6. In fact, Bridgeport and Springfield are actually nearly identical in terms of shots taken and shots allowed. The biggest difference is that Springfield has Joel Hofer getting the bulk of the work, standing on his head for much of the season, and has a relatively strong defense. Bridgeport has Corey Schneider, who's been fine, and Jacob Skarik, who's been meh. He's there. When you look at some recent games, the shots for opponents are nearly always heavily clustered in front of the net. Their goalies are just having to work way too hard. While Bridgeport's own shots have been a lot more spread out. Their players are having harder times getting past opponents' defenses lately and making meaningful, dangerous shots, while the opponent is just kind of having their way with Bridgeport's goaltenders. If their defense had maybe been able to protect their goalies a little better, keep them from having to face so many high-danger chances, they could be in a much different spot as they go into their final games of the season. But I do think it's time to call it for Bridgeport. I don't see a meaningful, realistic path to them somehow getting into the playoffs.
I will say too, my preseason promise to honor their new changed name was if they crossed the 84-point threshold. They are now mathematically eliminated from that. Sound Tigers forever. All right, we could talk about the Sound Tigers some more, but I think that's a good place to leave it. Let us move on and talk about the Belleville Senators. Sarah, tee us up.
All right, so we've got some more weird math here because the Belleville Senators have playoff odds sitting right now at 6.7%. That's like this much. But they're only 2 points back of a playoff spot. So, all right, you're the math guy. How does that work?
So that's correct. The model has them at 6.7%. I will bring that up here on the stream. This is Belleville's little tiny slice of life right here. It's not doing great, but they are only 2 points back. However, both the Rocket and Monsters have at least one game in hand on them. They just lost a 1-0 game to Cleveland, which definitely shoots them in the foot. The only reason that they aren't in a worse spot is that random ECHL goalie named Mark Sinclair carried them to a shootout loss. And I watched that game. I very much do mean carried them to a shootout loss, kicking and screaming. I want to say Cleveland outshot them almost 2-1. And if you look at the shot chart, it very much is one that is just covered in the front of the net by Cleveland. Moreover, the team is 3-7 in their last 10, and loser points are what's keeping this race even artificially tight. Belleville only plays one of its remaining 4 games at home, a Saturday game against Cleveland. That is a must win for them to stay alive in the race. I will say, though, whatever's in the water in the Senators organization, they need to stop letting the goalies drink it. The Belleville Senators have gone 4 straight games with different goalies dressed. 10 different goalies have played for Belleville this year. 10 goalies. If that's not a modern AHL record, it's got to be at least close. To answer your question, though, they aren't just chasing one team for a spot. It's 2 teams. The Monsters also got Fix Wolanski back after he overslept, and the Rocket got Tony Rick back. So they're clearly stronger teams than they were before, and are stronger teams than Belleville right now. So basically, Belleville's chasing 2 teams that are stronger than they are right now in terms of roster. The teams they're chasing have games in hand. 3 of their last 4 games are on the road. The model sees all of that, and 6.7% is probably lower than what I would have pegged them at, but it's not ridiculously off. This is not a math error on the model's end. This does add up when you look at, they're only a couple points back, but it's not that simple.
All right, so let's pivot to talking about a goalie who Belleville and Ottawa fans will likely get to see more of. Levi Marilainen is a guy who they want to see more out of. What can AHL and NHL Senators fans expect from him?
He's a bit of a project right now, but a promising one. He tracks the puck well, has a good frame on him, has the athleticism you'd love to see on a goalie that's on the bigger side of the scale. The height scale, not the weight scale. He's like 175 pounds. So, but his movement is where I think he excels the most, though. You don't see a lot of busy or kind of extraneous moves. He gets where he's going in a very efficient manner. It's very steady, very calm, rarely gets caught being behind the play, but has the athleticism to make saves when he is. His first 2 starts in North America have gone really well, which was at least a little bit surprising for me. When he came to the OHL from Finland, he definitely struggled to adjust to the North American game, and that took some of the shine off of him as a prospect. He went back to Finland from 1 year in the OHL and played well this season, but I was expecting to see that transition back to not just the North American game, but a higher level of the North American game trip him up. It only looks, it hasn't tripped him up yet, but it's only been 2 games. So let's maybe hit pause on that one before we announce that Levi Marilainen is the new Belleville or Ottawa Senators savior. But the only area that really looks like a specific weakness to me is his rebound control. He's good at making the initial saves, but he'll kick rebounds out into places that lead to follow-up chances at the AHL and especially the NHL level. That's going to be problematic. He's young. He hasn't played that much in North America at a high level. So he has plenty of runway left to iron out some of those wrinkles in rebound control. But he definitely has a pedigree and a toolbox that screams, at minimum, like NHL backup. He should be someone who still needs some seasoning in the AHL. I expect him to be, if not Belleville's number 1 starter, then part of a pretty balanced tandem between him and probably Mads Søgaard. Like Belleville, for having as many goalie problems as they do, also do still have like a fair number of goalies in the system. It's just they're not healthy, and apparently they all hate Cam Talbot. So that is where Belleville and Ottawa is on Levi Marilainen. But I think he's definitely an interesting prospect and should be solid for them in the years to come. All right, let us keep on going here. Let us get to Syracuse. Sarah, on Twitter this week, I highlighted the Crunch forward Alex Barré-Boulet contributed so much to his team offensively and defensively. He's nearly off the chart. What has Barré-Boulet been up to, and why is he still in the AHL?
Well, the answer to your second question is because Tampa. His longest look in the AHL or in the NHL was last season. He played 14 games with Tampa and also 2 with Seattle. Otherwise, he's basically stuck in that AHL tweener purgatory. We talked about him at the top of the show when we were looking at the proposed Chicago existence and players who could potentially find a home there. And I think that I agree. He's a guy who is too good for the AHL, but is he not good enough for the NHL? He hasn't really gotten a fair shake in the NHL to even find out, so it's hard to say for sure. He is listed as 5'10" on the AHL site, which usually means he's shorter than that. Tampa isn't really a team that has shied away from playing undersized players, but that's certainly a factor that is going to, work against him in finding an NHL home. If he was a guy in a different system, something like Arizona, Vancouver, Chicago, somewhere right now that has the roster space to play guys who are sort of trying to figure out how they fit in the NHL, I feel like maybe he'd be getting a shot right now. But Tampa is in win now mode, basically until the wheels fall off of Steven Stamkos and Victor Hedman and all them. So until then, a player is going to have to be truly exceptional to break through onto the Lightning's roster, and that just hasn't been the case for Alex Barré-Boulet. I don't want to say that the Crunch aren't known for graduating players to the NHL. That feels unfair to the Crunch, but it's more because it's like the Crunch aren't given the opportunity to graduate players to the NHL. Seattle is pretty much, Tampa is pretty much set with the guys that they have, and they get guys via trades. They don't really necessarily bring up prospects, and that's working for them clearly. Along those lines, would you like to guess how many picks the Lightning have in the upcoming draft?
3.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right now the answer is 3. 1 6th round pick and 2 7th round picks. So they basically have no picks.
0. They really have 0.
They have 0, yeah. In 2024, the Lightning have 5, but those 5 don't start until the 3rd round. The next year, 2025, the Lightning have 6, but no first round pick. So things are very close to being dire for the future viability of the Syracuse Crunch, because there will literally not be bodies coming in because there are no draft picks. But that is a problem for tomorrow's Syracuse, not today's Syracuse. The answer to your first question, what is he doing right now? The answer is basically scoring like a madman. He is dominating the AHL. He's currently 2nd in points, right behind Michael Carcone. Barré-Boulet has 79 points over 64 games. He has 11 points in his last 10 games. Recently, he had 2 goals and 2 assists in a win over Wilkes-Barre Scranton. The final score is 4-3. So yes, he had points on all of Syracuse's goals. He leads his team in shots taken with 209 by a wide margin. The next closest is Trevor Carrick with 159. He leads the team in power play goals, and he's shooting at 11%, which is actually a little bit below his career average. Overall, aside from him, Syracuse has a lot of players having career years. Barré-Boulet has beat his previous high, which was set in his rookie season. Third-year pro Gage Goncalves has already more than doubled up his points totals from last season. Simon Ryfors came over last year after playing 5 seasons in the SHL. He is putting up big points this year. We've talked plenty about Darren Radish on the show in previous episodes. He's up in the NHL right now, but he's having just an absolutely bonkers season, which no one, I don't think, ever would have predicted. Veteran Trevor Carrick, he's not having a career year, but he is putting up the most points he's had since 2018-19 with Charlotte. The Crunch even have really one of the only truly good goalies in that division, with Hugo Alnefelt seemingly kind of coming out of nowhere this season with his performance, especially recently. I think if the Marlies weren't in this division, we'd be talking about Syracuse a lot more as a threat, but because the Marlies are just so far ahead in the standings, it's easy to forget about basically everyone else in this division. But Syracuse, I think, is being led by a lot of really talented players who just aren't finding a path to the NHL. Darren Radish is kind of like the exception this year in terms of guys who have sort of graduated. But poor Alex Barré-Boulet, still stuck in Syracuse, but making the best of it.
Yeah, he does have another year on his contract, but I don't know. I have to imagine he wants, not necessarily out of Syracuse, but he wants a place that will give him a fair shake at an NHL deal. Of the games he played last year, all but I think 3 of them, he was under 13 minutes played. Like you're not getting a fair shake with Alex Barré-Boulet playing him, third line, energy line kind of minutes. Like that's not. I mean, that's better than when Daryl Sutter calls up a 23-year-old, but like it's still that's still a rough look if you're Alex Barré-Boulet and you're trying to make something of it. Like he's someone who I definitely would have thought would be not necessarily requesting a trade, but if there was an opportunity that came up in Arizona or something like that, I would have thought, because like it doesn't seem like the Lightning have him in their future plans. And like, as you pointed out, they're in win now mode. They're trading every draft pick they've ever had to try and keep, this dream alive for a little bit longer, keep the account open as it were. But I don't know. I feel bad for him because it does feel like he's just, punching up against a ceiling that's never going to move. But I mean, that must be nice for him at his height that he's finally hitting a ceiling of something. But I'm done. Yeah, that was me. We're going to take a break here, and after the break, we will get to Milwaukee, Texas, Coachella Valley, and Henderson, the Silver Knights. If you're just here for an Eastern Conference team, and this is your jumping off point, you don't want to hear about the mythical Western Conference, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. Links to our social media and more can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. We're gonna run some ads, pays, and bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Calder Farmstead. If you are just tuning back in, you have skipped ahead from all the Eastern Conference talk, and you are now here for the Western Conference, where we are going to start our next segment with the Milwaukee Admirals. So in the offseason, the Milwaukee Admirals essentially tore down and rebuilt their whole blue line. Only Mark Delgazio played significant minutes for Milwaukee last season. Their defensive environment rating right now is an 81.1, which is just above league average. But the graph of their defensemen isn't what you would expect from a team that could win the Central Division. So, Sean, has the Ads' new blue line actually worked out this season for them?
First and foremost, every time we mention graphs, it makes sense to, pull it up quickly here on the screen. Their defenseman graph looks kind of like this, where it's basically just Jordan Gross out here by himself making offense, and everyone else is pretty much right around the center point or the average for creating offense across league defensemen. So yeah, that's not exactly what I think they were hoping for from this bunch this season. I would say it's probably not worked out as well as the front, the hockey ops in Milwaukee had hoped. But I don't know if they were wrong to take the risk here. Like, yes, the blue line is younger, and some of those parts haven't worked out as well as they thought they would. Adam Wilsby is probably the one that sticks out the most, at least in my mind. I thought his transition game would translate much smoother from the SHL than it has at the AHL level. I mean, he was never going to be a creative offensive play driver that, say, Jordan Gross is at the AHL level, but I was expecting more from him than he's delivered this season. But a lot of the parts the Admirals let go of aren't exactly lighting the world on fire in their new place, like, having a spite tour. They're more or less doing the same thing, statistically speaking, they've done in the past. David Farrant's doing a little bit better. Jerry McDavies is about the same. Same with Matt Tennyson. Same with Matt Donovan. They're all pretty much doing the same things that you would expect from them, And while that group is more talented than the current one in Milwaukee, I think they'd still have a lot of the same problems because defense is a team aspect of the game. And when, say, Nashville has like half your roster called up at one time, which, yeah, they do. The guys who backfill those roster spots are going to make mistakes on defense and in transition that makes your job as a defenseman harder. That's especially true without Gross in the lineup, as the Admirals lack a dynamic puck mover on the blue line in basically any fashion. And that is Jordan Gross. And what he brings to the table, they can't replace or mimic or try and like build a facsimile of. Like, just he does it, no one else does. And when Nashville inevitably misses the playoffs here and Milwaukee gets guys back, gets guys like Tomasino, Jankowski, Sherwood, Evangelista, etc., I think the Ads will be fine, and that they would not need Yaroslav Askarov to make 40 saves a night and carry the team, kicking and screaming to ugly wins. But I don't think the blue line rebuild has necessarily gone as well as they thought it would, and that they maybe should have tried to hold on to like Jeremy Davies. And then, everything else, I think if they would have done that, the season would have gone a little better. They'd maybe have a little bit of a lead on Texas for the Central Division, but that's kind of hindsight being 2020.
All right, so let's wrap up again here with the chat with about some playoff talk. So the Admirals have officially secured their playoff berth, and while we don't have the Money Puck AHL graph quite yet, what do you think the Admirals' chances are of making a playoff run here?
Look, I didn't make the jumble mess of this playoff bracket where 4 divisions have 3 different ways of coming up with a divisional final, but I am the one who's stuck trying to teach the computer how to calculate it, and shockingly, it's not that straightforward and is insanely time-consuming. To answer your question, though, the Central Division should absolutely come down to Milwaukee and Texas when all is said and done. They're the only 2 teams in the Central that win at full strength. Big old asterisk we got to put on that one because Milwaukee is literally running a skeleton crew. Like, I'm pretty sure they're going to start pulling people out of the crowd if there's another emergency call up to Nashville. But like, they're the only 2 teams in this division that look like complete teams without a clear, glaring weakness. Like, Manitoba lacks a goalie I have a lot of faith in, and Winnipeg should make the playoffs, which makes their lives more challenging. Rockford can't defend the net front and hasn't been able to make up for that with sheer voodoo. I mean, goaltending. Iowa doesn't have scoring depth, and their special teams are bad. And Minnesota is going to make the playoffs, so that makes their life harder. All of that spells out what should be a trip for Milwaukee to at least the divisional finals of the Central, where hopefully they play Texas and get into what I just assume will be an amazing 5-game knife fight, figuratively speaking. But if like that's the way it seems like it's very obvious for it to play out. Like, Milwaukee and Texas are the best 2 teams in that division. They should very clearly be on a crash course for the divisional final. And I don't think it's too likely that we see any derivation from that unless like Nashville makes the playoffs or someone gets seriously hurt on Dallas that requires like a call up. But they're going to likely play Texas in the divisional finals. And from there, if they beat Texas, it's a conference final berth and a very real shot, at a Calder Cup finals berth. And it's anyone's game from there. So in short, yeah, I think it's really likely that in the event that Nashville restocks Milwaukee after the regular season is done, the Ads are going to, raise the sails on their boat and go for a good deep playoff run. I think that's something that they got screwed out of the most by COVID. Like, that Milwaukee team that Carl Taylor had in 1920 was one of the best that we've seen in some time, and I wanted to see a big showdown between like them and Providence. Mm-hmm. I think that would have been amazing, but we got robbed of that. But it looks like at least now we can have some facsimile of that, because when they're at full strength, man, Milwaukee's good.
Yeah, I'm actually in Nashville right now. I went to the Predators game earlier this week, and with the exception of a secondary assist from Tyson Barrie, every point in that game, every goal from the Predators was scored by a guy who at some point recently has spent significant time in the AHL. Tommy Novak, Luke Evangelista, Phil Tomasino, Cody Glass got the game-winning goal. Their entire starting lineup on forward was all guys who I have covered at some point in the AHL. I knew that Milwaukee had lost a lot of guys to Nashville because I knew that Nashville basically sold off anything that they could, and is also dealing with a lot of injuries. But I feel like seeing it in front of me of like, oh no, I saw those guys like a couple weeks ago in a different jersey. I think really brought home exactly how many players from Milwaukee are not there right now because Nashville needed bodies.
It is really impressive when you look at Carl Taylor's resume for guys that have spent significant time in Milwaukee under his leadership that have gone on to the NHL in significant roles. Like, he's not someone who's like, it always drives me nuts when I forget who it is, like who was the coach at the time. It might have been Jay Woodcroft, when like Leon Draisaitl played like 11 games in Bakersfield. And it's like, oh yeah, he developed. Shut up.
No.
Nobody. No. You cannot convince me that Leon Draisaitl's like career trajectory was forever changed by the 11 games he spent in Bakersfield. No. Bye. But like, Carl Taylor has done a very good job of turning your second and third round picks into guys who become everyday NHLers with Nashville or with someone else. Like, look at what, career, like Cody Glass is a big one. And that's like Cody Glass had gone through 3 organizations that just couldn't seem to get him over the hump. And Milwaukee did. Like, that's a huge feather in Carl Taylor's cap. But I think that is enough about the Admirals. Let us talk about their Central Division nemesis at this point in time, the Texas Stars. The Stars are currently tied with the Ads for first place in the Central Division, with Texas having 1 game in hand over them. Texas has been fighting all season long to gain that top spot and a return trip to the playoffs, where they will look to avenge their loss to the Ice Hogs last year. What does life look like for the Stars when they head into their final weeks of the season, Sarah?
So life has been pretty good for the Stars, who, while you'd like to see them maybe win a few more games lately, at least they are keeping pace with the Admirals. As we mentioned earlier, this is really a 2-team race right now. The Manitoba Moose briefly occupied the top of the division, but they have fallen off big lately. They've only won 3 of their last 10, currently sitting on 74 points. Texas has won 5 of 10 with 2 overtime losses. Milwaukee's won 6 of 10 with 1 overtime loss. So they're basically keeping pace with one another. Milwaukee, however, is on a 3-game losing streak, partially owing to, as we were just talking about, the fact that like all of their players are in the NHL right now. Texas, meanwhile, has a 2-game point streak going on. As you just heard, like we said, Milwaukee is dealing with having lost a lot of players to Nashville as the Predators either make a playoff push or deal with the fact that they have no players, depending on who you ask. The Stars, however, haven't really been losing people lately to the NHL. Thomas Harley was called back up. Matt Murray has been back and forth a few times, but this is a team who, by and large, has had their top players lately and are getting contributions throughout their lineup. So Riley Barber, who we all know and appreciate for his scoring, has been doing exactly that. He's got 61 points in 64 games. Tanner Caro, Curtis McKenzie, both having strong seasons as veteran players. And then they're getting contributions from younger players like Mate Blumel, who's got 42 points in 56 games. Maverick Bork has 38 points in 64 games. And so, those guys are contributing as well. Texas has also been doing great at limiting goals against. And at even strength, they are one of the highest scoring teams in the league, tied with Syracuse. I think they might be missing Thomas Harley a little bit, him maybe helping drive offense from the blue line. But defensively, Alex Petrovic, Ryan Shea, both nearly off the charts in terms of what they're bringing defensively to this team. Overall, I do think this is a team who has a very good chance of going on a long run, provided that Dallas doesn't take their key players away, either as black aces or to fill any roster holes that might come up. Like if the Stars lose Matt Murray, you might as well get ready for whatever your plans are for the day after that round of the playoffs. It's going to be a very different story if they're having to rely on Dylan Wells or whoever else is lurking down there. If the playoffs started today, Texas would be playing the winner of Iowa versus Rockford. I think both of these teams are very beatable for Texas, which would set them up to play the winner of Milwaukee and Manitoba. So like we just said, we could very easily see the real number 1 and number 2 in this division fighting each other in the playoffs. It could be fun, stressful for their fans, but also very fun. Looking at the end of the season, Texas's schedule is pretty straightforward. They play Tucson, Manitoba, and Iowa twice each. Texas this season has winning records over Tucson and Iowa. Manitoba's given them some trouble, but I think really Texas just needs to stay the course, make sure they're at least keeping track with Milwaukee, and just hope for that number 1 seed. So you get that first round bye. I mean, it feels like everyone gets the first round bye at this point, but I think they'd be much happier playing the winner of Iowa Rockford versus having to deal with anything else.
Not only that too, but then they get guaranteed home ice advantage in the finals. And that's, I think, like home ice advantage matters a lot more in the playoffs than it does in the regular season. It matters in the regular season. But that one I think is the bigger one, is that you would then not have to worry about home ice advantage against likely at this point. I think it's just down to them in Milwaukee. If Matt Murray does go down, they do have Remy Poirier, who's in a very small sample size been okay-ish. But if it's what Dylan Wells is the other goalie they got from Chicago. Yeah, if that's the case, then they're toast. But could I see Remy Poirier giving them enough cover to get them through? Yeah, I could see that working out, but that definitely would not. That would definitely hurt their chances of getting past, say, Milwaukee in the divisional finals. All right, I think that is enough messing with Texas. Let's get over to the Best Coast, the West Coast, and the Pacific Division. Let's talk about the Coachella Valley Firebirds. The Firebirds had a chance to seize the number one spot in the league on Wednesday night, but they lost 3-1 to Calgary instead. It looks like it's going to be a fight to the finish with those two teams for the regular season title. Can Coachella Valley surge to the top in their inaugural season, Sarah?
So in some ways, it seems like the Firebirds might be hitting a little bit of a wall. Their loss to Calgary was tough. Right now, each team has 98 points. They've got 5 games remaining. A win for Coachella Valley would have started to create more of a gap with the Wranglers, but instead they're dead even. And Coachella Valley has been not quite as, impressive. I mean, they're impressive, but they haven't been closing out games the way that we're used to seeing them do all season long. Lately, they've blown several leads. There were 2 games in a row recently where they've given up a goal while the other team had their goalie pulled. The game had to go to overtime. The goals against haven't necessarily been the goalie's fault, so I wouldn't really be looking at this as Joey Decourt or Chris Dreger screwed it up. But really, when you look at it, the other team is getting the opportunity to attack the net late in play, and Coachella Valley hasn't had much of an answer for it. They're letting the other team kind of dominate them in those last 2-3 minutes of play when they've got the goalie pulled. In those games that went to overtime, both times Coachella Valley has been dominant in terms of possession, but they also tend to give up odd man rushes. So, it's the thing where the play goes the other way, or you just have one bad pass and then the other team's off to the races, and there you go. Sure, they've allowed some points to San Jose and Colorado. That's not really the biggest deal in terms of Coachella Valley's life. They're far enough ahead in the standings that it's not going to impact them too much. It is having an impact to other teams. For example, Ontario, watching teams like the Barracuda and the Eagles get more points, I think is probably making them squirm a little bit. But, for Coachella Valley, you'd like to see them close those games out. If it turns out that they end up losing the top seed in the division or the top in the league by a couple of points, those overtime losses could look a little ominous if that's how it turns out to be. Looking at their players, one guy who has been impressive lately has been Ty Cartier. He was just named AHL Rookie of the Month. He's a player who, when I was out in Palm Springs recently, caught a couple of games for Coachella Valley. He really impressed me. And when I learned he was a rookie, it was even more impressive. He is a player who, when you watch him, he doesn't have a lot of panic in his game. You don't see him make a ton of mistakes. He's one of those guys who, as the cliche goes, plays a little older than his years. Lately, when he's playing, he's been putting a little more pressure on the puck when the opposing team is in their own zone. So he's forcing turnovers. He has the speed. He has the hockey IQ to keep his stick on the ice to disrupt passes. And he has a pretty strong forecheck. So he's been able to intercept the puck, and he'll either score or he'll contribute directly to a goal that his team scores shortly after. Perhaps more importantly, though, it seems like other players that he is on a line with are picking up on this, and they're doing the same. So as a whole, his line is usually excelling at capitalizing on mistakes that the other team is making. The forecheck is a pretty strong part of Coachella Valley's game. From what I've heard is that Jess Campbell, assistant coach there, has had a big role in this behind the bench. A lot of discipline is instilled in those players, especially on special teams. They're not making a lot of mistakes in terms of that. The PK is also pretty strong. The power play has been improving lately. They had a little stretch where it was pretty tough, but lately they've been on a 4 or 5 game streak where they've had at least one power play goal in each game. They're getting more effective passes through the Royal Road, a lot more precise in terms of their passing to one another. And so this is a place where Ty Cartier and also Cole Lind have both been pretty productive on the man advantage. We have talked on here before about Coachella Valley's PDO, which has been sky high at times this season. No matter what, they're a very good team, but you have to wonder what they're going to look like when that PDO comes crashing down. If you look at their current PDO, it is just above 98, and they are still excelling. That tells me that this is a very good team that is going to be scary good when everything clicks together. We have seen them at their best. We have seen them outperforming expectations, and they have been, when they're bad, they're still good, which I think says a lot of good things for Coachella Valley. They're also pretty much top in the league in terms of shooting percentage, and overall they're getting better at picking their spots instead of just shooting indiscriminately. They're getting a lot more precise in terms of that as well. When we look at how the NHL could affect Coachella Valley, Seattle's playoff picture is a little bit murky right now. They've slipped down into the wild card. John Hayden had been called up. He was in the NHL, but he's done for the season now after having surgery for a lower body injury, so he can't come back to help Coachella Valley. Jesper Froden could return, but other than that, it didn't look like Seattle had actually papered anyone else down to return. So Coachella Valley is kind of working with the roster that they have. But one big question mark is Shane Wright. The Windsor Spitfires were just eliminated. They were swept out of the playoffs. So is it possible? I'm pretty sure the rules would let him come to Coachella Valley on an amateur tryout to play through, have some fun. Would Seattle do that with him? Maybe. But he is a question mark, and I think a lot of people are going to be really curious to see what he does now that his junior season is over.
See, I don't think he can. Because he wasn't on the roster but has an NHL contract.
Yeah.
I don't think he can. I don't think he can sign an ATO when he already has an NHL contract.
Yeah.
I think that is what clips him out.
Yeah. I feel like I went back and forth on it, and I was like, I think you're right, though. I think because he has the NHL deal, because I feel like the other guys who come down are guys who haven't signed yet. So sorry, Coachella Valley. You don't get your boy.
Yeah, because he signed. There might be some weird technicality about it, but I'm pretty confident that they can't send him down. Also,
if anyone's going to make up a technicality, it's going to be these guys.
But also rookie mistake not papering more guys down Seattle.
Right.
I know it's your first year with an AHL affiliate, but come on. All right. I think that's a good place to leave it. Let's move on. Sarah, who is the last team on the docket?
Well, we've got a preview here from your jersey because the last team we're talking about today is the Henderson Silver Knights. Now, you have spent almost the entire season campaigning for Isaiah Seville to be the Silver Knights' starting goaltender. He finally got the call up from the ECHL and has had, let's say, mixed results so far. He's currently got an .892 save percentage and is currently rated by the model in the 18th percentile, which is a replacement level grade. Are you regretting the campaign for Isaiah Seville?
I do not, actually. Let's talk about Seville's performances so far, shall we? First, he stops 33 of 35 for a .949 save percentage and looked solid doing so in his AHL debut this season. Second start went poorly. He gets banged for 6 goals against, I believe it was Coachella Valley on 32 shots. Didn't play great in that game. I'll spot you that one. Not a good game by him. Makes a strong comeback, gives up 2 on 33 shots for a .939 save percentage, gives his team a chance to win in 2 of his first 3 starts. Then gives up 15 goals in his next 4 starts, which is a lot. But having now seen all 15 of them and having had watched a fair portion of those games, I would argue only 4 of those 15 are ones I would put on him. There's maybe 1 or 2 I'm like, I would have liked you to stop that puck, but I understand how that ended up in the net. But let's go game by game, goal by goal here, and I'll explain a little bit. 4th start in the AHL, San Diego on the 11th. Playing both games in the back-to-back is a choice, but I guess Henderson didn't think that Jordan Paperny deserved to start that second game of the back-to-back somehow. But whatever. Tired, Isaiah Seville, First goal against is a power play goal off a rebound that had the Henderson Silver Knight defender at the net front not bumped into Seville right before the shot is taken. He maybe makes that save. That goal, not on him. Second goal, Prisky snipes from the outside on the rush. That's on Seville. He needed to stop what was a very savable goal. Like, there's still some element of danger because it's off the rush, and there's a little bit of, checking over your shoulder to make sure there's no passing lane across. But at the same point, you needed to stop that puck. Third goal is a backhander from the high slot that he saw cleanly. Those two are on Seville. He needed to stop those two. Next start, San Jose on the 15th. The first three goals are all defensive mistakes where passes are literally just tape to tape into the slot across Royal Road. Those are plays that every goalie is expecting his defense to at least do something about. Either have the guy off the puck tied up, block the passing lane, slow the puck down, do something. But like, his defense is literally just standing around, watching the puck go past them under their sticks, through their skates, all of that. Like, the fourth goal in that San Jose game is on Seville. He has a clear sight line on the shooter and just gets beat Wild West, showdown style. You need to stop those pucks. Fifth goal is off a breakaway because Sheldon Rempel flubs a shot. Martin Kaut takes off going the other way. Kaut then makes a drop pass on a breakaway. Like, that is like the golden rule of taking breakaways, Sarah, is you don't try and like make a drop pass. Martin Kaut makes a drop pass, gets it through the Henderson defender that was chasing him. And basically there are two guys on San Jose who have a little miniature 2-on-0 at literally the net front. One of them puts it in. That's not on Seville. What was he supposed to do there? The guy made a drop pass on a breakaway successfully. Like, all right, next start is Bakersfield the day after Patty's. First goal is on a 5-on-3 penalty kill. There's a Condors forward just completely unguarded at screening the life out of Seville. He couldn't have seen a solar eclipse if that was what was happening in front of him. Never saw the shot. It's the defense's job, to play defense at the net front, and they were not appearing in this film. Not on him. Second goal, also a 5-on-3. There are a lot of 5-on-3s in some of Henderson's games recently. That is alarming. But second 5-on-3 goal was off a deflective pass that Justin Bailey tips out of midair. Like, it was a pass that was going into the slot. It hit the defender's stick. It hits the crossbar behind him and comes out of the crossbar, and Justin Bailey just knocks that in the net. What was he supposed to do there? Like, that's not on him. Third goal is a rebound off a block shot that was just a tap into an empty net. He didn't block the shot. This is, shot hit somebody in front. It just goes right to the stick of someone who has a wide open net. Nothing to be done there. Bad luck. Last start we have to talk about is the 31st against Calgary. First goal is off a pass right into the slot that should have been defended by competent defense. I don't put that one on Seville. Yeah, like, it's nice if he would have made that save, but it's not his fault that, that's the shot that he's asked to defend at that moment. Those are high danger chances that get in. Like, those are the way goals are scored. You need to defend those passes. Second goal is off a rebound, off a block shot. Again, just bounces right into the slot. Condors get it, take advantage, and shoot. It's a bad bounce. That's not on Seville. Third goal is a partial breakaway from just atrocious defense. I would have liked to see him come up with that save, but I don't put that goal on him. That's one of the ones where I'm like, it would have been nice if you would have stopped that, but like, literally a partial breakaway off of a chance your defenseman should have done something about. I can't put that one on you. Fourth goal is on Seville. He's late tracking the puck in this one. Just doesn't read the play from high to low quickly enough, get off the RVH and get into his stance and his depth, gets torched. That's on him. 4 of 15 I can put on him. Maybe one or two others. I'm like, I would have liked you to have made that save. But by and large, Isaiah Seville is still playing well, but Henderson is playing like crap in front of him. I mean, yes, he has an .892 save percentage right now, but since he's been in Henderson this season, Yuri Patera has an .872 save percentage over the same time span with the same defense in front of him. So now I haven't gone back and watched all of the goals that Patera let up, but given the state of the defense of the Silver Knights play in front of Seville, I struggle to imagine that Patera is getting better service from them. I still like Seville's game a lot, and what I saw backs that up on the film. He is still a great toolkit, solid fundamentals, able to read and track the puck well. He has struggled a little bit on high to low plays as they develop and getting on top of those, but again, He's been in the ECHL for most of the year. Those plays don't happen very fast when you are at that level. But he's definitely still adjusting to the speed of the AHL and how, an actual professional hockey league is versus the way the game is played in the Coast. But he has the tools for it. Should he have gotten or at some point get competent defense in front of him? I think we're very likely crowning me correct here instead of me doubling down. But again, it's only been 8 games, but that is what I am doing. I am doubling down here. Seville is the future in net for the silver and very likely golden Knights at some point. But he needs playing time in the AHL, and passes to the back door need to be defended more effectively. Otherwise, it didn't matter if you put Dominik Hasek back there. Like, you can't put tap-ins on the goaltender. That's not how that works. Sarah, any thoughts on Isaiah Seville and my adamant? I have given Isaiah Seville better defense than his actual defense has given him this season. Just want to point that out.
I mean, I admire the confidence, and I hope that someone tells Isaiah Seville that he has someone who believes in him, because clearly his defense is just not helping him.
Seriously, how many games were you going to let him play in the Coast before you're like, maybe we should give him a shot? That's the part where I'm like, I believe in him, but apparently not a lot of people in Henderson do. Jesus. All right. Sarah, any thoughts before we go to start bench ship?
No, let's do it.
All right. First up on start bench ship. If you are new to our show, start bench ship works very similar to a game you may know. We'll call it Friend, Marry, Kill. Similar concept. I'm sure you'll pick it up pretty quickly. So our first category here, we have a new mascot in the AHL. Calgary unveiled Blasty as the Wranglers mascot. So obviously we needed to feature him here in some capacity. So Sarah, start bench ship Blasty, Ringo, and Naughty. That is the Calgary Wranglers, Texas Stars, and Utica Comets current mascots. What are your thoughts?
All right, we're going straight up in the order that are on this page here. We are starting Blasty. I am always a fan of the big flaming horse. I'm delighted. We are benching Ringo, which makes me sad because I find Ringo to be highly entertaining. I've talked previously on the show about seeing Ringo's antics at an all-star game in person, and I still find that delightful. I am benching Naughty because that terrifies me. I don't know what it is. Like, if I had to put this up against like Wish.com Hammy, I don't know who would frighten me more, and it might actually be this thing. I'm sorry, whoever is behind Naughty, but I can't. All
right, that's fair. I am actually going to start Naughty.
All right.
Like, he clearly is meant to be scary and like kind of a dick, and they lean into that like very hard, and I think it works for them. Like, they own the bit of like, no, he's not nice, he's naughty. Like, and I think that's like, he does a lot of very fun things at games, and is in general, like, they've done a good job like kind of marketing and leaning into the gimmick of like, no, he's not like kid friendly really, like he's kind of an asshole. I do appreciate that, and that them like straight up just leaning into the bit. I am going to bench Blasty here. I think that like they made a good mascot choice. They didn't go for some silly like fire-based thing, like, the flame that started the Adirondack fire. Or anything like that. But they went with something that was familiar-ish, but not used in a mascot capacity. So I think this was a smart choice for them. I haven't seen too much of him yet. He's new, but I'm willing to give him a chance. I don't understand Ringo as the Stars mascot. I get he's a ring-tailed lemur, I think it is, or something like that. Yeah. But I don't understand how that connects to the Texas Stars. Like, Naughty is basically, because the Comets mascot with Vancouver was Audie, who was like an alien that they found beneath the arena, and then Naughty shipped him away. Like, they did a whole thing about it. I have not seen the origin story of Ringo or why he's their mascot. I'm assuming there probably is one, like some, copywriter 10 years ago made one, and I just haven't found it. But like, I don't know. He's a cool mascot, but it feels very like it's not quite as ridiculous as the Cleveland Monsters as a seagull mascot,
Mhm.
but like this feels at least 3/4 as random. So I'm sorry, Ringo. I know people love you, but I'm shipping you to the coaster right now.
I'll give you that. That's fair.
All right. Next category. Let's talk about first round upset potential here. So currently all three teams here, the Ontario Reign, Tucson Roadrunners, and Hartford Wolfpack, are going to be in, the underdog. Like I don't count a 5 seed beating a 4 seed as a big upset. Like, but these are, 7 and 6 seeds going up against, a 3 seed or a 2 seed in Tucson's case. So let's do start, bench, ship it. Who has the best chance at a first round upset? I will kick us off here. I'm starting Hartford for one very simple reason. Ontario's goaltender is Matthew Villalta, Cal Peterson. Tucson's goaltender is currently Tyler Parks and/or Ivan Prosvetov when the Coyotes season ends. Yeah, Hartford is Louis Domingue. Louis Domingue can steal you some things. Maybe even some spicy broccoli or spicy pork and broccoli. But like Louis Domingue is the clear goaltending winner here. And if you're going to pull off a big upset, it starts and ends in your goalie stood on his head. So if I have to pick one of those, I'm taking Louis Domingue and Hartford. I am benching Ontario. I want to believe that they are a better team than some of the stuff I had to watch last week explaining why Cal Peterson is not the sole cause of their problems. But like there's talent there. I think like could they beat Coachella Valley or Calgary? It's dicey, but these are the three teams I'm picking from here. I'm shipping Tucson. Tucson is an ECHL team at this point. They're Michael Carconi and like one or two other like Michael Carconi, JSD, and Laurent Dauphin and like 12 ECHL players. So yeah, shipping them to where their roster rightfully mostly belongs feels good. Like Michael Carconi is going to probably win MVP and be a candidate for best forward on our award show. Not because he's undeserving, but also because like it's him alone out there. Like he's dragging JSD to like a career season. Sarah, your thoughts?
I would like to just copy and paste your entire answer because you are correct. Hartford, we've talked about them. I feel like they are either going to have an amazing, surprising upset, or they're going to continue. They're just going to do what they did last year and just crash and burn. But I think, like you said, Louis Domingue, we have seen him steal games at every level that he's played in. He stole NHL playoff games last year or whatever. So I think that he can keep Hartford alive maybe longer than Hartford wants to be alive. It pains me to not start Ontario as someone who is unabashedly a homer on the show occasionally. But we have seen them struggle. We've seen them struggle particularly without Jordan Spence, who has been called back up to the Kings. And if he stays there, it's going to make life a lot harder for Ontario. So I think that it is possible for them to upset whoever they play in the first round, but it's an uphill battle. Yeah, Tucson is Michael Carconi and some guys. Sorry, guys.
All right, last but not least, this seems like an opportunity for the Wolves embracing a new independent era for them to do what we've been saying for a long time needs to be done and refresh the logo. Like keep the color scheme, but refresh the logo. I went digging on the internet and found some color schemed Wolves logos that are at least something you could squint at and kind of picture on the Wolves jersey. They may not be perfect, but like good options exist out there. So Sarah, start, bench, ship these three updated Wolves logos.
All right, we are starting C, the one on the far right.
Mm-hmm.
It has that kind of like mean, angry, determined wolf-looking face, which I feel like fits the Wolves vibes. A and B are too close to like the Arizona Coyotes sort of look for me to get fully on board with, and or very close to the now formerly SB Nation 5 for Howling logo. I feel like one of them might actually be a direct ripoff of it. But so they both make me think too much of coyotes and not wolves. But regardless of those two, I would bench A. I like the kind of like cleanliness of the design. And then I'd ship B, because it kind of looks like a bear wolf dog. Like
that's fair.
It's sort of undetermined what it is.
For me, I really like A. Like I see your criticism. I think if you could put C's face on A, we would literally just be presenting this to Wendell Young. But
get him on the show.
we're working on that. I think, he has some other things to take care of. The Athletic is calling him. TSN is calling him. I'm surprised he answered our calls. But I am taking A. I think the fact that like the W motif that they've worked in the alternate jersey, and this pulls right from that, you have a nice clean connection to something from your past. So this doesn't feel like a direct assault on the logo. I think that's something that people who would not be happy that they're changing the logo could at least get on board with eventually over time. I am benching C. I do like the side profile, and I do agree that it is like the most menacing looking of the three of them. But I feel like there needed to be a little bit more here instead of just the wolf's head. I'm shipping B. You are correct. That definitely has like bear, dog, coyote kind of vibes. Like I think with some work that could be good, but I think as is that is the least good of the three of them. Although I'll be honest, I would take any three of them over what they currently have. Yeah. All right, Sarah, any thoughts to close the show before we call it a night?
I am good. It's been a blast. I can't wait for more drama.
That is the one thing that we are definitely guaranteed, especially as the playoffs come up, is more drama. But on that note, Sarah, take us home.
All right. Well, that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is a part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs all at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Like, if you're thinking we're a 3.5-star podcast, I'd ask you for the full 5 stars, like a pity 1.5. That's what I'm asking for here. All right. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing these things helps us a lot because it helps other people find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page, which is linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Sarah, where can the people find you?
Well, my name is Sarah Avampato. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. That's WRITE said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I talk about the Ontario Reign, or at Canes Country, where I talk about the Chicago Wolves. Sean, where can people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. My Instagram is not terribly active, as I am not a picture guy. I don't do too much photography. Most of it's my dog being cute. My Twitter is pretty active, mostly hockey, but a lot of other stuff in between. You can find all of my stats work, all of the graphs we've shown you on the screen. I think there's now up to maybe 17 or 18 total graphs. There's a graph and then a cell phone version. The Money Puck graph is coming, I swear to Christ. But you can find all of that on my Tableau page. Easiest way to get there is bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Thank you for tuning into the show. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. Please dump and chase responsibly.